Chosen ones, be careful. There are moments in life when your spirit senses something before your mind can explain it. You cannot always put it into words. You cannot always prove it to people. But deep inside, something keeps whispering, pay attention, watch closely, guard your heart. And many times, when that feeling comes, people around you will dismiss it. They will call you dramatic. They will say you are overthinking. They will tell you to ignore what you feel, but hear this clearly today. Sometimes discernment sounds like paranoia to people who have no spiritual sensitivity. Sometimes wisdom looks strange to those who live carelessly. Sometimes the truth reaches your soul before it reaches your eyes. Chosen one, you are not imagining everything. You are noticing patterns. You are seeing shifts. You are recognizing energy that words have tried to hide. This person, yes, this person you have been questioning is trying something. Maybe they are trying to confuse your peace. Maybe they are trying to gain access to your heart without honoring your value. Maybe they are trying to keep you emotionally available while giving you nothing real in return. Maybe they are trying to study your weaknesses so they can manipulate your responses. Maybe they are trying to smile in front of you while competing behind your back. Not everyone who claps for you is celebrating you. Not everyone who checks on you cares for you. Not everyone who stays near you is sent for your good. Some people come close only to gather information. Some people ask questions not to understand you, but to measure how to use you. Some people offer kindness only when it benefits their agenda. And this is why your spirit has been restless, because your soul recognizes misalignment even when your mouth stays silent. Chosen one, listen carefully. The enemy does not always arrive as destruction. Sometimes it arrives as distraction. Sometimes it arrives as flattery. Sometimes it arrives as dependency. Sometimes it arrives disguised as friendship, romance, partnership, or support. That is why you must stop judging people only by their words. Watch consistency. Watch timing. Watch how they respond when you say no. Watch how they behave when you succeed. Watch whether they honor boundaries or resent them. Watch whether they bring peace or pressure, because fruit always reveals the root. A person can speak softly and still carry harmful intentions. A person can quote wisdom and still lack integrity. A person can look loyal and still be positioned against you. Chosen ones, be careful who you keep explaining yourself to. Manipulative people often ask for explanations they never intended to respect. Be careful who you keep rescuing. Some people drown repeatedly because chaos is their comfort zone. Be careful who you keep proving yourself to. Those committed to misunderstanding you will never be satisfied with evidence. And be careful who you keep allowing access after repeated warnings. When life shows you a pattern, believe the pattern. You do not need 10 betrayals to validate the first red flag. You do not need public proof to honor private discernment. You do not need permission to protect your peace. Hear this prophetic truth. Your growth has made certain people uncomfortable. Your healing has made certain people nervous. Your discipline has made certain people lose control over you. The version of you that sets boundaries cannot be manipulated like the version of you that begged to be loved. And some people are not reacting to who you are. They are reacting to losing access to who you used to be. That is why the tension increased. That is why the strange behavior started. That is why the guilt tactics appeared. That is why distance became necessary. Chosen one, stop feeling guilty for evolving. Stop apologizing for clarity. Stop shrinking to keep others comfortable. Stop reopening doors heaven helped you close. You are allowed to protect what God is building in you. You are allowed to be silent. You are allowed to say no without explanation. You are allowed to outgrow toxic familiarity. You are allowed to walk away from disguised dysfunction. And remember this: not every battle requires confrontation. Some battles are won through separation. Some victories happen through silence. Some blessings arrive only after access is removed. So if your spirit keeps warning you, listen. If your peace disappears around someone, pay attention. If confusion increases whenever they enter your life, observe carefully. If you constantly feel drained after dealing with them, that is information. The chosen do not survive by force alone. They survive by discernment. Today, trust what has been shown to you. Trust the repeated signs. Trust the discomfort you kept trying to dismiss. Trust the wisdom growing inside you. Because you are not being punished by distance, you are being protected by it. And this season is teaching you one powerful lesson. Everyone who reaches for you is not reaching for you. Some are reaching for your light. Some are reaching for your energy. Some are reaching for your favor. Some are reaching for what they refuse to build themselves. So be careful, chosen one. Stay humble but stay alert. Stay loving but stay wise. Stay kind but keep boundaries. Stay open to good people but close to harmful patterns. Because you are 100% right about one thing, something has been off. And now that you see it, do not ignore it again. Chosen one. There are moments in life when something inside you begins to speak long before the world around you says a single word. It is not always loud. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet discomfort, a subtle heaviness, a feeling that refuses to leave no matter how much you try to ignore it. You may smile on the outside, while something within you keeps whispering, pay attention. You may continue the conversation, continue the friendship, continue the routine. Yet deep in your spirit, a signal has already been sent. Many people ignore this inner warning because they have been taught to trust appearances more than discernment. They have been trained to believe only what can be touched, measured, and proven. But the chosen often experience life differently. They sense shifts before they become visible. They notice changes in energy before behavior becomes obvious. They feel the tension in a room before anyone admits something is wrong. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is not overthinking. It is not imagination. It is a gift that protects you when logic has not yet caught up. There were times you doubted yourself because others told you that you were reading too much into things. They laughed at your caution. They minimized your concerns. They made you feel guilty for noticing inconsistencies. Yet while they dismissed what you felt, your spirit continued sounding the alarm. That inner warning remained because truth does not disappear simply because people refuse to acknowledge it. The warning within often comes when words and intentions no longer match. A person may speak kindly while carrying envy. They may offer support while secretly resenting your growth. They may stand close to you physically while being distant in loyalty. On the surface, everything appears normal, yet your soul recognizes the gap between what is said and what is real. The chosen can feel that gap. They may not have evidence yet, but they sense misalignment. Sometimes the warning comes through exhaustion. You leave certain conversations feeling drained. You spend time with certain people, and afterward your peace feels disturbed. You begin doubting yourself after interactions that should have uplifted you. You feel confused where clarity should exist. You feel tension where love should live. These are not random emotions. Often they are signals that something around you is operating against your well-being. The world teaches people to override intuition in order to keep others comfortable. It says ignore the red flags, give endless chances, stay polite at any cost, keep access open even when harm is repeated. But wisdom does not function that way. Wisdom pays attention to patterns. Wisdom listens when peace begins to disappear. Wisdom understands that repeated discomfort can be a message. Chosen one, remember how many times you tried to talk yourself out of what you knew. You told yourself you were being sensitive. You said maybe you were tired. You made excuses for behavior that unsettled your spirit. You explained away dishonesty, disrespect, manipulation, and hidden hostility because you wanted harmony. Yet no amount of rationalizing could silence the truth rising inside you. The warning within is often gentle at first. It gives nudges before it gives storms. It sends subtle discomfort before undeniable exposure. It gives you chances to step back before deeper pain arrives. But when ignored repeatedly, the warning grows louder. What began as a small uneasiness becomes emotional heaviness. What began as a question becomes sleepless nights. What began as a whisper becomes disruption, because what is meant to protect you will continue pressing until it is heard. There is a reason certain environments never felt right to you, even when everyone else seemed comfortable there. There is a reason certain people smiled at you while your spirit felt unsettled. There is a reason some opportunities looked perfect on paper, yet felt wrong in your soul. The chosen are often protected by discomfort. What others call anxiety may sometimes be discernment refusing to let danger feel peaceful. This does not mean every uneasy feeling is a prophecy. It means inner signals deserve respect. They deserve observation. They deserve patience. Instead of ignoring them, ask what pattern is creating them. Instead of silencing yourself, become curious. Instead of forcing connection, slow down and watch. Truth reveals itself to those who remain awake. Many people only trust warnings after damage has already happened. They wait until betrayal becomes public, until lies are exposed, until loss becomes undeniable. But discernment was trying to save them before the collapse. The chosen learn to honor early signals. They do not need a disaster to validate caution. They do not require public proof to set private boundaries. You may have felt this warning around someone who constantly needed access to you, but never poured into you. Someone who celebrated you only when you were struggling, but became distant when you rose higher. Someone who asked many questions, yet shared little truth. Someone whose presence always brought confusion, pressure, guilt, or emotional instability. While your mind searched for explanations, your spirit already knew enough. There is strength in trusting what your soul has observed. It does not make you cruel, it does not make you suspicious, it makes you aware. Awareness is a form of self-respect. Awareness says my peace matters. Awareness says I will not ignore repeated signs just because others prefer comfort over truth. The warning within also appears when you begin shrinking around certain people. You censor your joy, you hide your progress, you feel the need to apologize for your growth. You sense that your light disturbs those who claim to love you. This is important information. Healthy connections do not punish expansion. Real love does not resent healing. Genuine people do not become hostile when you become stronger. Chosen one, some of your greatest protections came disguised as discomfort. Some doors closed because your spirit would not settle. Some relationships faded because your soul refused to keep performing peace where none existed. Some plans were delayed because unseen trouble surrounded them. What felt frustrating in the moment was often mercy working quietly. Trusting the warning within requires courage because it may lead you away from familiar places and familiar faces. It may ask you to disappoint people who benefited from your silence. It may require distance before explanations exist. It may call you to stand alone for a season rather than stay connected to what is draining you. Yet solitude with peace is lighter than company filled with hidden tension. The chosen must learn that inner warnings are not enemies, they are guardians. They are signals meant to preserve clarity, dignity, and direction. They remind you that your soul can recognize what your eyes have not yet fully seen. They remind you that truth often knocks from the inside before it enters through visible evidence. They remind you that when something keeps feeling off, there is wisdom in slowing down, watching carefully, and refusing to betray yourself. Not everyone who enters your life arrives with clean intentions. Some come with smiles carefully placed, words carefully chosen, and presence carefully timed. But behind that surface, there are motives you cannot immediately see. The chosen ones often discover this not through instant revelation, but through patterns that slowly expose what was hidden in plain sight. It is never usually one single moment that reveals everything, but a series of small inconsistencies that begin to form a picture the spirit can no longer ignore. At first, everything feels aligned. The energy seems warm, the conversations feel easy, and there is a sense of familiarity that makes you believe this connection might be genuine. But intention is not always revealed at the beginning. Some people know how to mirror your energy perfectly. They study how you speak, how you respond, what excites you, and what weakens your guard. They adapt themselves to fit into your emotional space. It feels natural, but it is often strategic. Hidden intentions do not always appear as harm immediately. Sometimes they appear as excessive interest. Someone may want to know everything about you too quickly. They ask deep questions before trust has been built. They create emotional closeness before character has been tested. It feels like connection, but sometimes it is access being gathered. The chosen ones often sense this shift, even when they cannot explain it logically. Something about the speed of emotional intimacy feels off, even if everything else looks right. There are also those whose intentions are tied to advantage. They may see your strength, your opportunities, your relationships, or your growth, and they position themselves close enough to benefit from it. At first, they appear supportive. They celebrate your wins, they encourage your vision, and they present themselves as allies. But over time, subtle patterns begin to emerge. They become present when you are rising but distant when you are struggling. They offer help when it benefits them, but disappear when you need consistency. Not all hidden intentions are aggressive. Some are rooted in insecurity. There are people who attach themselves to your light because they feel empty inside. They may not consciously plan to harm you, but their dependence becomes draining. They begin to lean on you emotionally without offering stability in return. They expect access to your time, your energy, your understanding, but struggle to reciprocate in ways that are healthy. Over time, this imbalance reveals itself through exhaustion you cannot explain. There are also intentions shaped by control. These are more subtle and often more confusing. A person may not directly try to control you, but they influence your decisions through emotional pressure. They may guilt you into staying, guilt you into responding, or guilt you into prioritizing them above your own peace. They disguise control as care. They frame possession as concern. They present restriction as love. And if you are not discerning, you may begin to mistake emotional intensity for emotional safety. One of the most deceptive forms of hidden intention is inconsistency. A person may alternate between warmth and distance, affection and withdrawal, clarity and confusion. This pattern creates emotional dependency because you begin to chase the version of them that feels good while trying to avoid the version that causes discomfort. This emotional instability is often not accidental. It can be a way to keep you engaged while never fully revealing their true position. The chosen ones often experience confusion before clarity. They feel something is wrong, but cannot yet identify it clearly. They may find themselves constantly analyzing conversations after they happen, replaying moments, searching for meaning in behaviors that do not align. This mental activity is not random. It is the mind trying to make sense of what the spirit already feels, but has not yet fully accepted. Hidden intentions also reveal themselves through resistance to boundaries. When you begin to protect your time, your energy, or your emotional space, the reaction of others becomes very telling. Those with pure intentions respect your boundaries even if they are disappointed. Those with hidden intentions often resist them. They may guilt you, question you, or subtly punish you for creating distance. This reaction exposes what was previously concealed. There are times when people stay close not because they value you, but because they benefit from your presence. Your patience, your understanding, your emotional availability, or your resources become something they rely on. They may not openly admit it, but their behavior shows dependency without responsibility. The moment you withdraw, even slightly, their reaction reveals how much of the connection was built on receiving rather than mutual respect. Chosen ones often struggle with accepting this reality because their nature is to see the good in people. They give chances, they forgive inconsistencies, and they try to understand behavior from a place of empathy. But discernment is not the absence of empathy, it is the balance between compassion and awareness. It is the ability to recognize when understanding is becoming self-sacrifice. There is also a deeper layer to hidden intentions that involves energy exchange. Some people do not just want your attention, they want your emotional state. They feel better when you are emotionally available and unsettled because it gives them a sense of influence over you. They may provoke reactions subtly, not through direct conflict, but through small behaviors that disrupt your peace. Over time, you begin to notice that your emotional stability decreases around certain individuals without any clear reason. It is important to understand that hidden intentions do not always mean someone is entirely malicious. Some people operate unconsciously, driven by unmet needs, unresolved wounds, or emotional immaturity. But regardless of intention, the impact on your peace remains the same. The chosen ones learn that awareness is not about judging others harshly, but about protecting inner balance. Patterns eventually speak louder than promises. A person can speak beautifully, but consistency reveals truth. They can express care, but actions reveal priority. They can offer reassurance, but behavior reveals direction. Hidden intentions are not always exposed through dramatic events, but through repeated experiences that gradually remove illusion. There comes a point where clarity begins to form. You notice that your intuition was not random. You realize that your discomfort had structure. You understand that your hesitation was not fear, but perception. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The mask does not necessarily fall in one moment. It simply becomes impossible to ignore what has always been there underneath. Discernment is often born in the tension between what feels good and what feels right. It is the inner ability to recognize when something is slowly pulling you away from your peace, even when it looks harmless on the surface. Many people confuse emotion with truth, but the chosen ones gradually learn that emotion can be influenced, while discernment is anchored in something deeper that does not shift with convenience or pressure. There are moments when your heart wants to trust, but your spirit hesitates. That hesitation is not confusion. It is awareness operating at a level beyond immediate explanation. Emotion can be persuaded by words, gestures, and familiarity, but discernment is not easily swayed by appearances. It watches patterns instead of moments. It listens to consistency instead of promises. It observes energy instead of performance. In many situations, emotion becomes the louder voice. It tells you to give another chance, to believe the explanation, to overlook the inconsistency because of history or attachment. Emotion remembers how things used to be and hopes they will return to that state. But discernment does not rely on memory alone. It evaluates what is happening now. It is not interested in nostalgia if current reality is unstable. Chosen ones often struggle with this internal conflict. They feel deeply, sometimes intensely, and this depth makes it harder to detach from people who have created emotional significance in their lives. Even when something feels off, the emotional bond tries to justify it. It searches for reasons to stay, explanations to soften the discomfort, and possibilities that things might improve. Meanwhile, discernment quietly continues to gather evidence. There is a difference between compassion and compromise. Compassion understands people's imperfections, their flaws, and their struggles. It allows room for growth and patience. But compromise begins when you start sacrificing your own peace repeatedly in order to maintain access to someone who is not aligned with your well-being. Discernment recognizes when compassion is being stretched beyond its healthy limit. One of the clearest signs that discernment is speaking is persistent internal unrest. You may not have clear external proof, but internally something feels unsettled. You might find yourself second-guessing conversations, replaying interactions, or feeling uneasy without a logical reason. This is not irrational thinking. It is your inner awareness processing subtle information that has not yet fully reached conscious clarity. Emotion often seeks validation from others. It wants reassurance, agreement, and confirmation that what it feels is correct. Discernment does not require external validation. It stands even when others disagree. It does not collapse under pressure to conform. This is why chosen ones often feel isolated in their perception before clarity becomes visible to everyone else. What they sense internally is not always immediately understood by those around them. There is also a tendency for emotion to overlook red flags when attachment is strong. When someone becomes important to your emotional world, your mind may begin to minimize concerning behavior. You may explain it away, rationalize it, or attribute it to temporary circumstances. Discernment does not ignore these signals, it stores them. It observes whether they are isolated incidents or part of a consistent pattern. Discernment also understands timing. It recognizes when something is not aligned with your current season. Even if an opportunity or relationship looks good externally, something within you may resist it because the timing is off. Emotion may interpret this resistance as fear or hesitation, but discernment understands it as alignment, awareness. It knows that not everything that looks right is meant to be engaged with at that moment. Many chosen ones experience situations where they feel drained around certain people without any clear explanation. Emotion may try to dismiss this feeling, but discernment pays attention to it. Energy does not lie. Conversations that seem normal on the surface can still leave you feeling unsettled if the underlying dynamic is misaligned. This is not imagination, it is perception beyond words. Discernment also becomes clearer when boundaries are introduced. When you begin to say no, when you begin to slow your availability, and when you begin to prioritize your peace. The reactions you receive provide valuable insight. Emotion may focus on keeping harmony, but discernment observes behavior under limitation. It sees who respects your space and who resists it. There is a spiritual dimension to discernment that goes beyond logic. It often operates quietly, without dramatic signs. It is not always accompanied by explanation. Instead, it is experienced as a knowing. Not a thought that argues, but a knowing that settles. Even if confusion exists in the mind, something deeper remains steady. The challenge arises when emotion is loud and discernment is quiet. In such moments, many people override discernment because emotion demands immediate satisfaction or relief. But the chosen ones eventually learn that ignoring discernment often leads to consequences that emotion cannot undo. What was once a quiet warning becomes a lived experience. Discernment is not about suspicion. It is not about assuming the worst in people. It is about clarity. It allows you to see people as they are, not as you hope them to be. It removes the distortion created by attachment and expectation. It brings you back to reality without stripping away empathy. There are also moments when discernment asks for distance before explanation. Emotion wants closure, conversation, and resolution. It wants to fix things immediately. Discernment sometimes recognizes that clarity only comes with space. Distance is not always rejection. Sometimes it is observation. It allows patterns to reveal themselves without emotional interference. Over time, chosen ones begin to notice that when they follow discernment, even when it feels uncomfortable, they avoid deeper confusion later. When they ignore it, they often find themselves in situations that require emotional recovery. This contrast slowly builds trust in inner awareness. It teaches that peace is not found by ignoring internal signals, but by honoring them. Discernment does not remove emotional depth, it refines it. It teaches emotional strength without emotional chaos. It allows you to care without losing yourself. It allows you to connect without becoming entangled in what is unstable. It creates a balance where love does not require self-abandonment. There is a quiet strength in choosing discernment over emotional impulse. It does not always feel dramatic or powerful in the moment. Sometimes it feels like restraint, patience, or silence. But over time, it becomes protection. it becomes clarity. It becomes the reason certain storms never fully reach your inner world, even when they pass close by. Boundaries are often misunderstood by those who have been conditioned to equate love with unlimited access. Many people grow up believing that saying no is rejection, that distance is abandonment, and that protecting personal space is selfishness. But for the chosen ones, boundaries become one of the most important forms of spiritual and emotional protection. They are not walls built out of fear, but structures formed out of wisdom gained through experience. There comes a point in life when you realize that not everyone deserves unrestricted access to your energy. Some people enter your life temporarily, some seasonally, and some not at all. Boundaries help you recognize the difference between connection and consumption. Without them, you may find yourself constantly depleted, emotionally exhausted, and spiritually unsettled while trying to maintain relationships that were never balanced to begin with. A boundary is not a punishment, it is a filter. It quietly separates what nourishes you from what drains you. It allows love to exist without self-destruction. It allows compassion without compromise. It allows presence without losing identity. When boundaries are absent, relationships often become confusing because emotional access is given without structure. And without structure, imbalance naturally grows. Many chosen ones learn the importance of boundaries through discomfort. They may start by giving too much, explaining too much, forgiving too quickly, or staying too long in situations that repeatedly disturb their peace. At first, it feels like kindness, it feels like loyalty, it feels like being understanding, but over time, they begin to notice a pattern. The more access they give without limits, the more their peace begins to disappear. Not everyone respects open access. Some people interpret unlimited availability as permission. They begin to expect constant responses, constant emotional presence, and constant understanding without offering the same in return. This is where boundaries become necessary. They remind others that your time, your energy, and your emotional space are not infinite resources to be consumed at will. One of the hardest lessons for the chosen is learning that not every relationship is meant to be maintained at the same level of closeness. Some people are meant to stay at a distance, not because they are necessarily harmful, but because proximity without balance creates instability. Boundaries allow you to love people from a place that does not require self-sacrifice. When boundaries begin to form, reactions reveal a lot. Some people adjust with respect. They understand that your peace matters and that healthy relationships require mutual consideration. Others react with discomfort, resistance, or even guilt-tripping. They may question your changes, accuse you of becoming distant, or attempt to make you feel wrong for prioritizing yourself. These reactions are not always about you changing. They are about access being reduced. Boundaries expose intention. When someone values you, they adapt to your limits. When someone values access more than connection, they resist your limits. This is why boundaries are often uncomfortable for those who benefited from your lack of them. They no longer have unrestricted emotional entry, and that shift changes the dynamic. Chosen ones often struggle with guilt when they first begin setting boundaries. They may feel selfish for not responding immediately, for not explaining themselves, or for choosing silence over engagement. This guilt is often conditioned, not intuitive. It comes from years of being taught that self-neglect is kindness. But true kindness does not require self-erasure. There is also a deeper layer to boundaries that involves emotional energy. Every interaction carries an exchange. Some interactions uplift you, while others drain you without obvious conflict. Boundaries help regulate this exchange. They allow you to recognize when you are giving too much without receiving balance. And they give you permission to step back without needing external validation. Without boundaries, you may find yourself constantly available to people who are not equally available to you. You become the listener, the supporter, the understanding one, while your own emotional needs remain unaddressed. Over time, this imbalance creates resentment, exhaustion, and confusion. Boundaries restore equilibrium by ensuring that your presence is not taken for granted. There is also a misconception that boundaries push people away. In reality, they reveal who is meant to stay in a healthy way and who was only comfortable when access was unrestricted. Those who genuinely value you do not leave because of boundaries, they adjust. Those who relied on lack of boundaries often distance themselves because structure removes the advantage they once had. Boundaries are not just about saying no to others. They are also about saying yes to yourself, yes to rest when you are tired, yes to silence when you are overwhelmed, yes to distance when something feels draining, yes to protecting your emotional space even when others do not understand it. This internal permission is often the most transformative part of boundary setting. There are moments when boundaries feel lonely at first. You may notice shifts in how people interact with you. You may experience resistance or emotional pushback. But over time, clarity begins to emerge. You start to see which connections are stable and which were dependent on imbalance. You begin to experience peace that was not possible when access was uncontrolled. The chosen ones eventually understand that boundaries are not about creating separation from love, but about ensuring that love does not become self-neglect. They learn that true connection does not require constant availability. It requires mutual respect, emotional responsibility, and awareness of limits. Boundaries also protect your direction. Without them, you can become distracted by constant emotional demands, pulling your attention away from your purpose, growth, and inner stability. With them, you begin to reclaim time, focus, and clarity. You are no longer pulled in every direction by every need around you. There is strength in knowing that you do not have to explain every decision. There is strength in understanding that not every message requires a response. There is strength in recognizing that your peace is not negotiable. Boundaries allow this strength to become practical rather than theoretical. Over time, what once felt like discomfort becomes stability. What once felt like guilt becomes confidence. What once felt like separation becomes clarity. The chosen ones begin to realize that boundaries were not limiting their life. They were protecting it from being consumed by imbalance disguised as connection. There comes a moment in the journey of the chosen when everything that once felt confusing begins to settle into clarity. Not because the world has changed overnight, but because perception has shifted. What once felt like chaos now begins to reveal structure. What once felt like emotional heaviness now begins to reveal instruction. What once felt like loss now begins to reveal redirection. This is not a sudden transformation, but a gradual awakening where understanding replaces emotional noise. Moving forward is not always about speed. It is not about rushing into new spaces or forcing new connections to replace what was lost. It is about alignment. It is about carrying forward only what no longer costs your peace. It is about recognizing that not everything meant for you will stay in the same form. And not everything that leaves is a loss in the way it first appears. The chosen ones often find themselves standing at a threshold where they can no longer return to old versions of themselves. The way they used to love, the way they used to trust, the way they used to give access so freely, all of it begins to change. This change is not always comfortable because growth often demands the release of familiarity. But what is being removed is not identity, it is distortion. There is a deep internal shift that happens when you begin to trust what you have seen rather than what you wish to see. You stop negotiating with signs. You stop arguing with your intuition. You stop reopening doors that repeatedly showed you why they closed. This is where strength begins to replace emotional confusion. You begin to understand that clarity does not always come with closure from others, but with acceptance within yourself. Moving forward requires releasing the need for validation from those who never understood your value in the first place. There is a temptation to seek explanation, to seek apology, to seek acknowledgement. But the chosen eventually realize that not all understanding will come from others. Some understanding must come from within. The absence of closure becomes closure itself when acceptance is fully embraced. There is also a quiet power in no longer chasing what consistently withdraws from you. What is meant for you does not require pursuit that destroys your peace. What aligns with your path does not repeatedly confuse your spirit. Moving forward means no longer mistaking emotional intensity for meaningful connection. It means recognizing that stability is often quieter than chaos, and peace is often less dramatic than attachment. As you move forward, you begin to notice that your energy is no longer scattered across unnecessary emotional entanglements. You are no longer constantly analyzing, explaining, or trying to fix what was never balanced. Instead, your attention starts returning to yourself. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions begin to stabilize. Your focus starts shifting toward what builds rather than what drains. There is a season where silence becomes your teacher. In that silence, you begin to hear yourself more clearly. You realize how much noise was created by trying to maintain connections that were never reciprocal. You begin to understand how much of your energy was spent trying to make sense of what was never meant to be understood through effort alone. Silence reveals truth that conversation often hides. Moving forward also means accepting that not everyone will understand your decisions. Some will question your distance. Some will interpret your growth as arrogance. Some will assume your silence means indifference. But the chosen ones learn that misunderstanding from others does not invalidate inner clarity. You do not stop moving forward to make others comfortable with your transformation. There is a deeper awareness that develops when you stop over-explaining yourself. You begin to realize that people committed to misunderstanding will not be convinced by explanation. They will only see what aligns with their perception, so you conserve your energy. You choose peace over persuasion. You choose direction over debate. This shift is subtle but powerful. As forward movement continues, emotional weight begins to fall away. You notice that situations that once consumed your thoughts no longer have the same hold over your mind. Conversations that once replayed endlessly in your head begin to lose significance. The emotional charge attached to certain memories begins to fade. not because they did not matter, but because they no longer define your present state. There is also a restoration of self-respect that happens quietly. You begin to value your time differently. You become more selective with your presence. You stop offering unlimited access to those who cannot honor it. This is not bitterness, it is refinement. It is understanding that your energy is not meant to be distributed without discernment. Moving forward also involves letting go of who you were in environments where you were not fully seen. There are versions of yourself that existed in survival, in confusion, in emotional overextension. Those versions taught you lessons, but they are not meant to be carried indefinitely. Growth requires honoring those versions without remaining attached to them. There is a point where you begin to realize that forward movement is not about forgetting the past, but about no longer being controlled by it. The memories remain, but they no longer dictate your decisions. The experiences remain, but they no longer define your expectations. You begin to separate what happened from who you are becoming. In this stage, peace becomes more valuable than explanation. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. You stop seeking approval for decisions that protect your well-being. You stop reopening emotional chapters that repeatedly cost you clarity. There is a quiet confidence in choosing yourself without needing external permission. The chosen ones also begin to attract different dynamics as they move forward. As internal clarity strengthens, external confusion weakens. Connections become more intentional, interactions become more aligned. What is meant to stay begins to stabilize, and what is not meant to continue naturally fades without force. There is also a deep understanding that forward movement does not erase sensitivity. It refines it. You still feel deeply, but you no longer allow that depth to be used against you. You still care, but you no longer abandon yourself in the process of caring for others. You still love, but you no longer confuse love with self-neglect. The path forward is not always linear. There are moments of reflection, moments of pause, moments of remembering. But even in those moments, something within you remains steady. You no longer return to confusion as a home. You no longer accept instability as normal. You no longer mistake emotional chaos for connection. As clarity continues to deepen, you begin to see that every experience was shaping discernment. Every disappointment was strengthening awareness. Every loss of peace was revealing where peace did not belong. Nothing was wasted, even when it felt heavy at the time. Everything was redirecting you toward alignment that is no longer negotiable.